All right,
We haven't done a Crimea.
we are back. We haven't done Crimea, so let's. Why don't you pick a combo and then we'll do it instead of me picking from randomly. Call. Do you want to do crime
Okay.
in Rust NG or do you want to do crime NG Rust pad or what do you want to do?
I want to do Crimea engineering for sure, and I want you to choose the second one.
Oh, okay. Um,
I mean, not
how
out of the
about
hat. You personally choose
Sax
it.
End? Yeah, yeah. Sax End.
Yeah, that's good.
You
That's a good
love
one.
crime
That's a
NG. Oh, actually, no. Let's try Nordend. This one's really
Ooh.
confusing. Or like this one's really difficult to figure out. Let me put this up. So crime NG, crime NG. Sorry, hold on. Crime NG. Okay. I'm like, I need to go check my Discord for notes on this from Joy Division. But okay, you give your take and then I'll try. So Crime NG versus Norden is what we're doing here.
All right, Crime NG versus Nordend. 60-40 to Nord. It is favored to Nord, I would say.
Oh,
And that is
okay.
crap. Oh
No,
yeah.
that's
Oh yeah.
right.
I would
I think no,
yeah.
that's actually correct. I was incorrect, and Joy was like, "No, this is favored to Nord, like
Yeah,
by
yeah, it's definitely favored to
like
Nord
maybe
because of
15-20%."
for sure, for sure. Because if you can lock Crimea in their base early on and have no combat cards, play the zero card game and just artillery them into the ground, you can kick them off the board completely. And there is nothing they can do about it. There's almost nothing that Crimea can do if they're too slow. If you're playing with someone who doesn't know that they need to get the hell out of their base and do it fast, then they're done, especially with a good factory card and good encounters with Nord Industrial. Yeah, then
Yeah,
that's it.
shit, that was perfect actually. Wow,
Mhm.
that was
So
perfect.
what can
Like
Crimea do then?
three worker get out as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
That's their
This is your
best
main.
option.
Mhm.
They're better at the bottom rows, but if they don't have the infrastructure, which they only need a little bit, if they don't have the infrastructure, and Nord starts with only one combat card and like immediately plays it or like ditches it and is down to zero before, or they get a factory card that lets them use combat cards to do things. They play the zero card game, low power. So like low power Nord versus low power Crime is really good zero card game matchup. You can't do it when it's high power Crime versus low
No.
power Nord. But low power, that's when they're at their like the worst position. So Crimea needs to get out as quickly as possible. I do wonder about like with Crimea. I think you'll get picked on like different lakes and harassed and disrupted. But like if you just go like 8 workers and just get all the resources you need and then like trade metal into like a mine, that might work and keep your mechs groups. You don't give away combats and just try not to let them push you off like your food. It's like once you move, they might
Okay.
just wait and then disrupt you. But like I think that's the other way you could play it. So you go either go really fast or you go like slow, and that's possible if you play well. But they're gonna control the center of the board 1,000%, block you. They can wipe you off the map if you wait long enough that you have enough resources and like extra stuff. They might have trouble wiping you off the map completely. It's going to be a huge slugfest whenever the fights do start.
Definitely. And even in that case, they might be able to take over the board in some capacity and take advantage of your slowed strategy. And I've seen a lot of players when I've done this to them, like just get Wayfair and then, take the easy encounter that they can jump to from Crimea over in Russ's base. It doesn't work. It really doesn't
Yeah, they
work.
won't
Just
have the
getting
points. They can't get their character close enough to the
they're
factory by the
spread
end of
out.
the
They
game
can't get to
ever.
the
Yeah.
factory. It's
If
like
you
they're
take that
just relying
encounter,
on
your character's stuck, and then you don't get any more encounters, and you also like it's one move just to get to a tunnel, which you'll probably
yeah.
There's lakes adjacent to it. You'll probably get knocked off. It is really, it's pretty brutal. You'll need. It's not a good matchup. I used to think this was
Mm.
Crimea NG, Crime NG favored, but like, yeah, I've been shown the error of my ways by 1v1ing Joy Division, and he just like crushed. He's like, watch, I'll show you the north side. This is how you play it. Boom. I was just fucked instantly. um,
Definitely.
so yeah, you
It's
were right,
amazing.
man. You had the right read. Good job. Okay, that
Thank you.
covers it. Let's move on to the next one. All right, I'll draw a couple, but like I have a feeling it's gonna suck again.
If it's gonna suck,
These
we're
draws are
gonna
not
change
what
it.
I want. We'll make our own if we don't like the draw.
And for you IFA fans out there, sorry, I don't think we're
This
doing
is that one
IFA.
v one stuff only. Yeah. Um,
I mean, you can 1v1 and I just
you're
lost
right.
one.
Yeah, you
I was
can.
Togawa Ag. I was Togawa Ag against Sax Mech against like an 1100 player because, it's just Togawa Ag. It sucks. It just sucks. Doesn't matter what you do.
Oh, Tagawa Ag's probably like F tier. It's like the worst thing you can do. Yeah, there's nothing you can do. Unless you try to get pop stall and like think way ahead. I was listening to our
Tried it.
podcast where we talked about
Didn't work.
Crimea's play style, where we compared it to uh, Japan and World War II military history and like similarities. So I was like, it's all about being like the early bird, thinking way far ahead. Like we talked about how one of the parallels was like that they hit us first at Pearl Harbor, and they knew about the aircraft carriers. Like they were, you have to be like prescient in order to be good enough from like their situation. So I can see why it's a parallel to the way Japan performed in World War II, like their military performance at the beginning, at least. Okay,
Definitely. Throwback.
yeah. All right, so I just drew one and I didn't like it. It was like mech. It was like Nord mech versus Sax. Nord mech versus Russ engi, which is like super Russ engi favored. Like you can just do anything you want. You can't get into Nord's base exactly, but like you can just get all the stars. So that one sucked. So let's do our own. Let's do Crime Mech versus um I'm trying to remember which Russ it was. Russ Ag, Russ There's okay, so what happened was I had like a Russ Viet and I played Joy Division and he had Crime Mech and he basically just knew like he just had to hit me with Scout over and over and over again as fast as possible. He played it like Crime Int. He just like just pretend you're Crime Int. Do a three he did a three worker or two yeah, three worker. He got the card to pay for the first mech after trade. He like trade for 2 metal to start. Card third speed immediately. Like maybe one produce, boom, straight into the metal and just went all mechs first and just like later on made it up and like using combat cards to upgrade. He did a bunch of upgrades. He's like just pretend you're crime mint. I can't remember which Rust match was which Rust side I had where I just like lost. I was like, oh, this should be easy. I think it was Rust Pat and he just like he wiped me off the board with less money and I was just done. Like he just used the scout piece. If it was Russ engi, it wouldn't have been it because I could still win with speed with like the quickness of that board. So it was either Russ. Oh, if it was Russ Ag, he could have just straight up done the matchup and beat me with Crime Mech. He could have just played Crime Mech straight
Easy.
up. So it wasn't engi, it
Yeah.
wasn't Ag. So we got Pat, and then there's no end, right? There's no
Not for
Russ end. So then it would be yeah, it was Pat. It was Russ Pat. He just like wiped me off the board. I had money, but I had nothing. I had no map control. So it was pretty wild. That was another one. It was like he played it like the Crime NG3 worker that we do, where we go Crime NG into Russ Pat. He just made Crime Mech work that way, but I mean it kind of
That's what I
sucked
do.
because it was slower.
I actually do that every time I play against Russ as Crim.
Oh, even
Well,
Crime Mech, sweet.
absolutely, dude. I play Russ Mech the same way. I play the only one I have trouble doing is Crim Ag, playing Crimea Ag the same way. But even then, you could still do it. Like,
Crime Mag, yeah. Sometimes I play it with like immediate upgrade, and then I just produce like two or three or 3 or 4 oil Like it's basically just like a sprint, and then you use your get upgrades, and then you use your upgrades are like crack to crime mag, and then you just use your. The problem is if you can't. Okay, this is an interesting one. Like crime mag versus Russ, let's just say, or even versus
Let's do the
Polonia. Polonia, yeah.
let's do the read. Let's do the read with let's use Crymag instead. Let's make it a little more interesting. Crymag versus who? Versus Russ Pat, let's say. The two okay, we have two eco boards.
Let's do it versus a faster one though. But
Okay.
Polar Russ. It could be a faster Polar Russ. So Crymag. Let's do Pol Engi. Okay, this
Mm,
could go a couple ways. So there's a way to play Crymag where you go like produce once, trade two oil, move, upgrade triple move, and then upgrade your deploy so it only costs three, which is just like a combat card basically. And then you basically just do upgrades and skip pretty much everything else, and then you use combat cards kind of for your eco, and the upgrades are crack to Russ Ag. So what you can, or sorry, crime ag. So let me change this up on here to mirror it. So it's crime ag. This is one way to play it. All right, hold on. It's like really hard to edit this thing. Okay, crime ag versus Pol Engi. Okay, so you can just do the upgrade rush move with Crime Mag. You make it into like a rush board, and just use upgrades and combat cards. And then when you do get an enlist off, it's super powerful. And you might even do
mm,
like the double bolster, upgrade to get a bunch of combat cards back. But what you do is you just like wipe them off the map in a way, with against Pol Engi. You can do that. So the danger there is, so you just like constantly harass with scout, things like that. Get Wayfair, try to get a factory card as quickly as possible, so that way you're guarding against Wayfair. And FC with crime is a huge nerf to Polonia's like double encounter ability, because then you can guard all the abandoned bases if you can win a 1v1 versus them. So that's a huge nerf and it limits them. But like at the same time, you're just constantly attacking with scout and trying to wipe them off the map. Like you don't have to win each fight. The problem is crime engi, it's a little bit of like a it's a low power, so it's going to be easier to wipe them off the map because if you get an enlist in. um the thing is, if they're smart, they'll avoid you. Let's just say Pol Engi has some issues as a board. Polania's like 1v1 OPness could make up for some of it in terms of like the you need an upgrade. It doesn't make that much money. It's also low power, so not a good matchup to Crime Ag if you like speed run it, speed run Crime Ag. Let's see. You have to make sure that they can't, because if you're scrapping with them and they're a faster combo, you have to make sure that they're wiped off the board or have, even if they can end, they don't have the points. So this gets
mhm.
into like a complicated break point of like, look, they might be a bit way faster than you, especially if you're going to focus on upgrades and focus on moving a bunch, just to completely wipe them off the map. You're not getting in your bottom row actions done. So a good player would maybe block you in your base if they can, avoid you, try to amass some power. So you really have to be. It's going to be a stressful game because they may be able to end, but you need to wipe them off nonstop. Don't let them have workers to deploy to. Make sure that your score and that they can't knock you off like the factory. That your score's boosted so much that even if they did end, they couldn't. So it could turn that way where it gets stressful. But you might be able to hit them at the break point before they're able to end, and you just knock them off the map, and then you can on the back end recover all your bottom row actions. So that's one way. That's one way to play Crime Mag. I actually really like this matchup. I think it's like pretty. It's Polonia encounter one and factory card dependent, and the way
That
Crime Mag plays it is dependent, but I feel like it's like 45-55, like 55 Crime Mag, 45 Pol Engi. But any Pol with high pop is insanely overpowered in the late game because they have camaraderie. And they can just have all their mechs and lakes and then just take any fight, and the other person's constantly having trouble with their triple moves. So, like, Pol Engi, if you go late, With the pop, it's almost on like Polonia with the high pop late in the lakes, and they go in a Riverwalk base that the other faction can't get to. Crimea can get to any of them, so that loses some of the advantage. But pole, any type of pole NG is the worst. But like any type of pole in the late game with pop using the lakes is very overpowered and difficult to beat with camaraderie when they hit you and don't lose pop if your workers are with a mech. So I really like this matchup. I would say it's about maybe 60-40 Crimag or 55-45 favored to Crimag. That's just one way to play Crimag. Another way is like the thing is like I said, pull NG late game is insane, but NG doesn't make a lot of money, and it can't go into like Russ's base and hide where it's untouchable and just do upgrades and get a lot of money. Whereas Ag is the second richest board after Pat, um, as long as you go through the enlist.
Yeah, you have to
So
go through.
yeah, so like the late game eco, you're weaker there because of the ag. If you go the eco way and they're both ecoing, the ag is still really strong at the end. So that's one way to play it. You know, you could do the eco play with crime ag, which is a whole different matchup. But let you give your thoughts now, Cole, because I went off on this one.
You did. Well, I find it interesting. I think one way, if you should probably see what crime is going to do, and it also, like you said, is going to be first encounter dependent. But there is a strategy to play pull engi aggressively and to basically get yourself two mechs almost right out the gate, and be into Crimea's Lake I want to say turn 5 or 6, something like that. So pretty early. So I mean that is one way too, depending on what they get and depending on which one they're trying to play, that you can kind of damage their strategy and push the envelope, put the heat on them right
It could
away,
be
and you can
six,
block them
turn
in the face with
six.
that.
Yeah.
Turn
Like
six,
turn
turn six.
six,
Yeah,
but you can't hit them till turn seven when you'll have a factory card. And that's if you get
exactly.
some metal on the encounter on turn four, with NG. Yeah. There's another way to slow your factory a little bit and then get into their lake and hit them even sooner if you put the seaworthy in. And you
That's
move.
what I'm. That's the one.
Yeah, you
That's the one
trade
I'm
two
talking about.
metal, take two steps,
Yeah,
trade two
foam
metal.
off's opening. Yeah,
Um, Walk again, and then take the encounter and move your seaworthy mech because you deployed seaworthy,
into
and
into the
then
lake
into the
because you already.
lake. Then from
Yeah.
there, once you put speed down, you can hit them.
Then
You
you can
could hit
already
them
you
like
you can
turn
just jump
seven,
right
I
into their
think.
base.
I think you could
You
hit them
can
turn
jump, yeah,
six potentially if you get the right encounter.
you can
Yep.
hit them turn
So
six
if you want to go
on.
really aggressive on Crime Ag before they have Scout, that could be a nice angle. Yeah. So like with any of
That's what I'm
these
thinking about. Yeah,
Yeah. With any of these reads, Cole made a really good point, and this is something I overlook, which is like ideally you start in the most flexible way possible that can go into multiple openings, and then you do that as long as you can until you can see which direction they're going. Like they'll like maybe on turn 3 you'll be able to tell how they're going to play it. So like with Russ Patlets or Russ Mech opening, let's just say you do like two produces because you'll need that no matter what, but that'll give you time to see what they're doing. So like in any matchup, that's ideal if you can. Sometimes you have to pick a direction, but this is something Nevik talked about on the other podcast, but that's critical. So he's right. You should see how they're opening. You should see a little bit how they're opening. Obviously, you can always start with trade two metal on pull mech, pull NG. But by turn two, you have to either move for the aggressive opening, and then Crime Ag will see that and potentially respond if they have space in their opening too as well. So like again, I'm actually thinking of Scythe strategy a little bit as like a living, like it's almost like money and the economy. It's a living, and like your own personal finances, it's a living organism. Like it's constantly changing and moving. Same thing with Scythe. There are certain times where it's like you can't change your opening, you're already committed. Like there's only one action available and you don't have the resources to be flexible. Like Crimea is the most flexible because it's got the combat cards. um
Mm.
but sometimes you're just locked into the path after the different breakpoint on the opening where you could have been flexible to respond to them. So it's option, it's optimal to do the parts that are required no matter which path, just to buy time to see which direction they're going, and then you do the other pieces if you can. It's easiest on Rust because you can repeat actions. So like, I'll let Cole finish up. Sorry, here you go.
No, yeah, and to your point a little bit, it's like you do want to make sure you're not shoehorning yourself into something that is, you know, going to be totally inflexible because it follows a certain strategy that you wanted to go into the board with, right? And this is one of the things where it's like if you're a middling player, right? I want to say, high 1200s, low 1300s, or a little bit higher, you might always want to pull off a standard opening, and a more advanced player might know exactly what you're doing and already have developed a counter to that. And then you may think, oh, well, sunk cost fallacy. I've already put my resources into this, and I'm just going to continue and hope that it works out. Uh, you know, 9 times out of 10, if they have a counter to that and you're going even when it doesn't seem to suit you, it's not going to work out, right? So I think that's really important to point out what you were saying.
Yeah, you should stop and reassess. If you can see like, all
Yeah.
right, they found an answer to this, like it's to my approach, and you can see over like 3 turns, you should always stop and reassess. And that like I struggled to do that. Like a lot of times I'll go 2 revolutions of that counter where they implement it before I stop to reassess, and then it's too late. So you always want to
Me
immediately
too.
stop and reassess. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's better to go standard openings because those are the most efficient, and usually there's some flexibility built in. If you're a lower player, if you know the matchups really
It's
well,
really-
you can respond to what they're doing, because then you've got a more like a harder edge on the break points. If you have your specific aggressive or like eco, so you'll have smaller. You can create larger edges on the different breakpoints in the matchup. If you're a more advanced player and you have a really good matchup read and you're watching what they're doing and you have an angle, it's like you want to abuse scout. You know that you're pretty confident you can wipe them off the map before they either can end, and if for some reason they get too many bottom rows off like encounters and it goes really well, you know that you're confident that you can get the spread and limit like their last deploy by stepping on all their workers and kind of corral them and then basically get the spread so that they don't have the score to end anyway. So as you get more and more experience, you can get into tactics like this. And some matchups literally require you to do this, where it's like you just have to wipe them from the map, um, or you just need to, if they can end, get your score too high and like control the factory, make sure they can't take it with a battle, so you get that 3 factory or 3 territory bonus. So um, those are some of the more advanced things, and they are more difficult to execute. And if you're outmatched, another player can outsmart you in a way. So I'll let you continue, Cole.
Yeah, and I think anyone who thinks this is a bit of a tangent, any match read that you're going to do is going to have to take these things into account, right? Which is why we give these percentages. But at the same time, like depending on the sorts of strategies that people use, they can shift, and they have shifted, and the scythe meta has changed over time, right? And when we talk about standard openings, sometimes now there's 2 or 3 standard openings for a combo, right? So yeah, it's definitely hard to kind of stick that in a pigeonhole and stay to one thing. But what do you say? Do you want to do one more read?
Yeah, what was so let's do this one a little more. I find this one really interesting. I mean, I think, yeah, like I said, maybe it's 60-40 if you're an experienced crime mag player. I would say it's probably 60-40. But the pull engi approach quick can shift it completely. And if their first encounter gives them power in a mech, and their second encounter gives them power, it might just be like pull. It just kills them before anything, like before they can even, and they block
Yeah,
them in. They just
sure.
take over. But most of the time, with more normal variants of encounters, crime ag will, if played cautiously with crime mag at the very very beginning, um, they will win. I think the eco way will win because on their off turns they can just get free enlist for a bunch of money if they don't have a factory card and they're blocked from the factory and they can only do the triple moves. But I think you can be outmaneuvered by a skilled player with pull engi when they have a factory card and you don't in the late game or in like the later game as well. Um, if you go Crimag Eco and pull Engi just does its thing, kind of ecoing to kind of take in encounters, tries to get its pop up. It doesn't have a Riverwalk base to turtle in and hide in that's immune. I think Crime Ag will probably win because they get tier one pop pretty naturally. Um, and uh, so I think Crime Ag will probably win, but like I said, Pole getting the triple move into the factory move over and over again. You can cheat encounters and get your pop up. You can do different blocks. You can hit them with like feint attacks where they're like vulnerable on their resources. Like there's a lot. There's different things you can do with the blocking if you're an advanced player where you could pull this out towards the like mid late mid game to late game. I think you could do some magic. Um, so yeah, that's this matchup. I like the looking at it as like the crime ag or like the rush from both sides and then the eco from both sides as
Yeah,
well.
I like that too.
And crime ag, if you get a power star, you only need one combat. Like if you're ecoing, I mean that's also nice too. So again, crime ag's really got the advantage, but this is a very nuanced matchup. Yeah, let's do another one. I think maybe let's look at one where it's like when we do the analysis, it's like they don't fight, so it's like laissez faire in terms of combat, and then one where they're like fighting, they fight a couple times, or if it's a matchup dependent where they like it's a slugfest. Sometimes those are that way. Do you want me to draw one? Or you have one in mind? Drawing one's not really
No, go.
working out.
All right.
Hold on,
Do you have
let
one in
me
mind?
think, let me think,
What
let
have
me
we not
think.
done here? We haven't done
Um,
sacks.
I like, I like Russ Mech Pole Pat. Do you like that?
Yeah, I like Russ McPull
I'm just trying
or
to find
any Russ
interesting
pull. Any
complex
Russ pull.
matchups that are similar strength.
Mm-hmm.
Like ones that you would draft in like in a 1v1 league where you would draft them, or like they would be set in like a 1v1 tournament with mirror matchups because they've been picked for like the nuances. Like a good one is Russ Engi Crime Ind. There are certain matchups that I just think are much more interesting than others, and are fun. So that's kind of why I'm there. So like Pole Pat. So we could do Pole Pat versus Russ Mech, or we could do Pole and Russ Engi, which was in the 1v1 league as like one of the combos when they prescribed the combos in like the first season, I think. And that was a great, very nuanced one. That's also a nice one. So let's do Pole Pat versus Russ Mech first, and then maybe the next one
That's
after
what
if
I
you
was gonna
want,
say. Yeah, I
and
think
then we'll see if
I got
we're
one more of
out of
these. I got
energy.
one more of these in me before I go do yoga.
Okay.
but but let's do it.
One more after this is just this.
No, just this.
Okay, which one do you want?
Oh, this one for sure. Pole Pat, Russ Mech.
Yeah, because this one's not as talked about, not as well known amongst probably the people who'd be
Right.
listening for 1v1. So I think this is going to be much more valuable on the like key reads in the matchups today versus what we did a year ago. Just you've gotten a lot more advanced. I've gotten better. All right, you take it away, Cole.
Okay, so let's think about this first. Well,
Yeah, think about it. How would you break it down? Because like obviously
I,
the skill in breaking it
I'm
down is what you need to develop. Some of these you'll just have to play versus a good player to see, but like you need the tools to actually get there to figure out to decode the matchup from both sides on like how to win. I think part of the key is figuring out the challenges with both and then trying to find matchups where you can like push on where one's challenged to find an advantage. But like again, you're not gonna know these. You're not gonna know these nuanced downloads on them unless someone shares them with you or you experience it from a really strong player and you can kind of figure it out. So again, the building blocks are the tools that Cole's gonna like work through here. So I'll let you go, and like that's what you need to develop is the building blocks to do the math to build the understanding of the matchup.
For sure. And I like this one because okay, there are a few things we're looking at here. We have two high power combos, right? We have both Pole Pat and Russ Mech are both high power. I would say, okay, for Russ, You can use the double upgrade strategy again. Pole Pat is usually too slow if they don't get an encounter to be able to meaningfully Russ's metal before they can just bring everything to the farm tile, right? So now we're talking about having two high power combos here. Russ's disadvantage, once again, is that they can stall out here, right? And Pole is not going to run into this problem at all. But with Pole, I mean,
Not at all.
you can meaningfully and easily get yourself a power star, just sitting in your base. And I believe I might have done this to you once by just getting encounter number 26
Oh, that was
and
insane.
literally just sitting in my base and doing nothing and getting 8 workers and not moving them and getting a power star and getting all the mechs right there. Okay, so Pole has the eco
They have
down,
like
right? Pole
towards yeah, towards
power down.
the mid game, mid late game, Pool's got options on like 4 stars. They have a complete luxury of turning in many stars. Power star, upgrade star, enlist star. It's insane. What Pole
That's
Pack
the
can do.
thing.
Yeah, so keep going, keep
That's
going.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So in this case, Russ does have to play a little bit more dynamically, I believe, than just, simply bringing 7 workers to the farm tile and trying to get off all their enlists immediately, right? I think for me personally, and this might be a little bit controversial, I would do more to rush the factory with Russ on this occasion, and honestly, probably try and get myself into Pole's base to keep them from finishing their workers or something of the sort. Just because Paul can, while he's waiting around for you to do nothing and to get your enlists off, they're getting pop, they're getting power, they're getting mechs off, they're building that substantial economy that's going to benefit them so much in the late game that I feel like this is one of the cases where Russ can't just sit back and buff on their eco like they always do until they descend on the factory. Um, as for who
Yeah, like
takes
let's
it, I
just
would
talk boards though for a second. So like Pole Pat, Eco, the patriotic board is the best at coin income and ecoing. So like if you just
Mhm.
go eco versus eco, you'll always lose to the pat board. Like Russ
You're gonna
Pat,
lose.
Pole Pat, you'll lose. So mech
You're gonna
is good-ish at eco, but not even the second best
no,
board at
yeah.
coin income. So you can't go straight up eco versus eco. You'll lose it. Um, Polania late game, insane with camaraderie and high pop. Also, what Pole Pat wants to do is just like it just wants to stall an eco and pick up some pop off encounters. It can go to Nord's base. It's untouchable by Russ. So Russ mech, what it has going for it is it's more efficient to get the bottom rows done. It has power.
Yes.
It has decent eco. It's got Russ has really good mobility, and then it's got pretty good military resources. But Polpat not efficient to get stuff done, but stalls has insane eco. Mid late game, it's got like 4 star options closing in on you, and it's got high power. It could take fights. It's got camaraderie. It probably has some nice decentish pop. It may not, but it has a lot of coin. So like maybe like a 8 coin advantage towards the end of the game over Rust Mac. So sorry, keep going.
Okay, so you were just talking about the board. So what I was saying, because of all that, is what I like to do in this matchup, and I think I've done it a couple times successfully, is do yourself not necessarily a factory rush, just go there quicker than you need to, and then from the factory you can use your factory move if you have people's army to just walk right into Pole's base. And normally at any time during this match they're still going to have a mech or a couple hanging around on that base, right? And a lot of people don't see this coming. um, so you can just river walk your way straight from the factory into Pole's base with your factory move and then hit them with two. You're going to have more CCs as rest by this point, as long as you've already done your enlist for combat cards. Unless they've gotten that enlist two on an encounter, chances are you can get in there and with your CCs and resources, if you play it efficiently, you can stop them. You can stop them from hitting that stall because it's going to take Pole Pat long enough to get their mechs out, and they aren't going to be able to hide in lakes, right? Unless they want to completely abandon their economy. So as far as Russ is concerned, to mitigate the disadvantages, I would say that's what you want to do.
Yeah, you need to have a
So
map presence, but also you can't
yeah,
waste any turns. They all need to be high impact
can't
with
waste turns
Rust mech because you're gonna need your township mech, speed, and riverwalk, and then you can start getting
right away.
onto the map. Hopefully, the factory card helps with bottom rows as you start to take more and more map presence. But you need to disrupt pole pat. It's possible they'll get a couple encounters that like make it almost really tough to disrupt them, and they're just too efficient. But like if they start and get all the combat cards with the enlist start, they're going to be even slower. They want to build up and then get like their workers finished and then probably into Nord's base with a lot of their stuff. So it's just completely invulnerable. But you will have a window where you can harass their base and take multiple
Yeah,
fights. Have map presence. There will be a window where you're more efficient. Again, like getting their mechs out costs 4. It's not efficient. They don't have metal access. So like you may have like 5 or 6 turn window, or you may only have like a 2 or 3 turn, like a 2 turn window with
depending on
Rust
the
Mech, where you need to make your impact and disrupt and get if you get 2 combat stars off of Pole Pat, you're done. You've succeeded. Like it's gonna
that's
take
it.
longer for all their stars to come to fruition. Um, but like if they can only give you 1 combat star, then you probably don't won't be able to hit your power star because you had to spend that power. And then if you haven't prepped your backup plan, they're gonna like finish up their eco and it's really gonna finish taking off and they'll have stars every which way. They'll be stalled in Nord's base. So complete the onus is on Russ Mech and you have to play it well. Pole Pat, it's
Mm,
easier. I would say 55-45 because Pole Pat does have challenges with getting mechs out. And they probably will beat you to the factory. If there's a factory deploy card, then Pole Pat is kind of unbeatable probably in this scenario because that's their only thing that's kind of going to slow them down a little bit and give you more of that window to
yeah,
hit them. So that's one. This is a great matchup. I really like this.
me too. One of my favorites, because a while back, a few months ago, it forced me to rethink Russ and Russ's possibilities as well. So yeah, I really like that matchup.
Yeah, I played this first Joy and I was on Pole Pat and he just like Um, I mean, he understood the read very well, and I didn't fully. So, like, he ended up getting into my base, disrupting my enlists on pole pad, and like he brought a bunch of workers with him because I had like 5 pop, and he really didn't want me going to tier 2 pop. So basically, he just like made me take my um food tile on my base back by hitting his like 3 or 4 workers on it that he had on it because he could do enlist from there for it to finish his. So like before you finish your enlist,
Nice.
you kind of you might want to play with it because there's a food tile outside Pole's base where you can do an enlist and also hit them from in 2 places
Mm-hmm.
on Pole's base because there's the
Very
food tile and the village, and you can go in either one. So like he got in there and forced me to take it back, which made me lose my pop because my win condition on him was gonna be like insurmountable eco and pop with camaraderie late game. He's like, I just wanted you to lose your pop. That's why I made you do go in here. So I probably should have just like found a different food tile and not fallen for that, and just not let him get a second combat. But if you can trick them into that with pull or Russ Mech, you're gonna have an easier time score wise, um, staying even if it has to go into late game. So yeah, pro tip a little bit from Joy. Maybe not pro tip, just like he's so innovative and clever. So yes, all right.
Pro tip.
That's it for Polpat versus Russ Mech. We hope you've enjoyed these matchup reads. For those 1v1 competitive 1v1 players and aspiring 1v1 players, we think that this is gonna be insightful and help empower your 1v1 skills. So we'd love to hear if anyone's learning anything, what they think, and I'll post this and tie it together with the other part, and I'll post this in the uh, site Discord, I guess, today, hopefully. So, thank you. Thank you for listening, and we hopefully will be back pretty soon. This was just a warm up to get back into it. We hopefully will be back pretty soon in the next couple weeks with another episode. I remember on our last matchup read, we talked about doing a podcast on breakpoints, Cole, for certain matchups where it's like the critical point where if you lose this or mess up, it's over. So I've been thinking about some breakpoints. Maybe you think about some, and we'll come back and get into it. So, all
Sounds
right,
great. Yeah, I've been thinking about that too. Let's go.
cool.
Thank you guys for listening. Stick around for the next one.
All right.